Time now for my review of Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new miniseries on Disney Plus, parts 1 and 2. And if you want me to continue reviewing the further parts of Obi-Wan, 3 through 6, because there's only going to be 6 episodes total, feel free and let me know in the comment section. By the way, this is going to be a mini-series on Disney Plus, and all episodes were directed by Deborah Chow. She directed some episodes of Mandalorian. So we're going to start off with non-spoilers, and then we'll move on to the spoilers when it comes to parts 1 and 2 of the Obi-Wan miniseries. It is great to see Ewan McGregor back again as Obi-Wan Kenobi, a.k.a. Ben Kenobi, 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. And for the most part, the production value is pretty good. Deborah Chow does a decent job, for the most part, directing. There's some editing issues here and there, but there's potential for this miniseries to be amazing by the time it's concluded in part 6. However, there are some concerns I have for Obi-Wan Kenobi going forward. If you're a Star Wars fan and have Disney Plus, I'd recommend you at least check out parts 1 and 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, unless you're planning on waiting until all 6 parts are available and then binge it start to finish. And that's good even if you don't have Disney Plus, because then you can get Disney Plus for free for a trial period. And during the trial period, binge watch Obi-Wan Kenobi and then cancel before you have to pay Disney a dime. But if you already have Disney Plus, you're a Star Wars fan, you might as well go ahead and at least check out parts 1 and 2. Each episode, by the way, was, I think, about 40 minutes in length, so about 80-90 minutes total between parts 1 and 2. And there's no end credits scene, by the way, for parts 1 or 2. So once the credits hit, just move on to the next part. I think that Obi-Wan Kenobi's off to an okay start. I know a lot of people are like really excited about it, but I was somewhere in the middle. I'm glad to see Ewan McGregor back, but there's concerns we're going to talk about now in the spoilers. And I'm not going to go over everything that happened in parts 1 and 2, but we will try to go over the big things that occurred. First off, the recap going over the prequels was really, really good. And you have the option to skip the recap if you want. I would recommend sitting back and enjoying it because it shows the interaction between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Anakin, from the events of Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, all the way up to Revenge of the Sith. It's definitely worth watching the recap as it goes into the main story of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, by the way, takes place 10 years later. But before you get to that 10 years later point, there is actually a scene in the Jedi Temple right when Order 66 is happening, and the 501st is about to storm into the Jedi Temple along with Anakin. And you have these younglings in training with this Jedi Master as the clone troopers attack. And she's basically fighting off clone troopers the best she can, trying to protect her younglings before she's eventually gunned down and her younglings escape. And this will probably be important in the future, at least for probably one of those younglings. So after this really cool scene inside the Jedi Temple, where the Jedi that are inside the temple are desperately trying to fight off the overwhelming forces of the 501st and Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader, it was a really cool scene, and I wish we would have had more of that in episode 3. After that scene, 10 years have officially gone by on Tatooine. The Empire's obviously in control of the galaxy. Stormtroopers and Inquisitors are out there hunting down whatever remaining Jedi are out there. Obi-Wan is no longer a Jedi. He's not going by Obi-Wan anymore. He's just going by Ben. He is working as a crate dragon butcher. So there's like this big dead crate dragon in the desert, and they're harvesting its meat, and he's one of the butchers. And they're not getting paid very much credits a day to butcher this crate dragon. But he still has his Epoi, or whatever the camel-like creature was that he had at the end of episode 3. He still has that animal 10 years later. And he always saves a little piece of crate dragon meat for his space camel. Ben Kenobi is transported back and forth from the crate dragon to, I think it's Mos Eisley. It's either Mos Eisley, Mos Ispa, Anchorhead. I forgot which one of the towns it was on Tatooine. It's probably Mos Eisley, but he's transported to Mos Eisley, and he always has his space camel waiting for him to take him back to his cave. He has a cave. He has his own, I guess, droid in the sand as a Brinks security to let him know if anybody has come inside his cave. If it flashes green, it means nobody has entered his cave. If it's flashed red, that means he has an uninvited guest. Ben Kenobi has also buried his and Anakin's lightsabers out in the desert while keeping a watchful eye on a young Luke Skywalker at the Owen Lars farm from a distance while working as a Krayt Dragon butcher. Meanwhile, the Inquisitors actually arrive on Tatooine, of all places. Why does so many things happen on Tatooine? But there is actually another Jedi running around Tatooine helping people out. And the Grand Inquisitor, along with third sister and fifth brother, show up to this bar, this cantina. Not the same cantina as in New Hope, but they do show up to a bar where there is a bartender that apparently was in some trouble. They found out that somebody has been helping the bartender, and there's something about the Jedi having this desire, this will to do good, even when they're trying to remain in hiding. They just can't help themselves, according to the Grand Inquisitor. And basically, they out a hidden Jedi. But the hidden Jedi get away because third sister tries to kill the Jedi that they're hunting, but the Grand Inquisitor doesn't want to kill it. I guess he wants to capture the Jedi, torture it for information, maybe find out if there's more Jedi running around. Needless to say, the Jedi in question gets away, even though fifth brother went after the renegade Jedi. So this is the first time that you see third sister butt heads with the Grand Inquisitor. It won't be the last time. Now, regarding third sister, she might actually be one of the surviving younglings we see at the beginning of part 1. That's just my theory. Other people feel the same way. So that's probably going to connect her to being once a youngling Jedi that managed to escape the Purge, Order 66. But then again, maybe that's just a red herring. Apparently, third sister and the rest of the Inquisitors have been looking for Obi-Wan for 10 years now with no luck. And she is obsessed with finding him. As I mentioned already, she, throughout parts 1 and 2, butt heads with the Grand Inquisitor and fifth brother a few times. Meanwhile, on Alderaan, young Leia is running around in the woods, just being a tomboy, I guess, with her little flying droid Lola. And Bail Organa, along with his wife, I don't remember Bail Organa's wife's name, Mrs. Organa, we'll just call her that, raising Leia as their own daughter. Meanwhile, Bail Organa is once again played by Jimmy Smits. While Leia is playing in the woods, the first time we encounter young Leia, she's being watched by a mysterious bounty hunter. And the second time we see her run off into the woods, dumb luck, the bounty hunter happens to be waiting for her, and him and two of his buddies try to capture her. By the way, the bounty hunter is played by Flea of Red Hot Chili Peppers. He also played Needles in Back to the Future, FYI. And despite this ridiculous chase in the woods between these three grown men or aliens and this little 10-year-old girl, somehow she nearly escapes. And 2 out of 3 guards end up getting killed in the process, who end up running off into the woods as well, trying to find Leia, not realizing that she's in peril and danger. But these got to be 3 of the worst kidnappers, bounty hunters ever, yet they somehow managed to capture Leia and get her off Alderaan. Eventually, Bail and his wife contact Obi-Wan and ask him for help. He initially refuses because he's watching over Luke at the moment, and Bail implores Obi-Wan, saying, look, his sister is just as important as he is. And obviously, because he sees Leia as his daughter, he wants her rescued. Despite Bail and his wife's first efforts to get Obi-Wan on board with going off to rescue Leia, Obi-Wan still refuses. He apologizes. He tells them to find somebody else to help them out. And when he's keeping an eye on the Owen Lars farm one night, and he leaves a ship, I think it's a T-65, or is it a different type of ship? A little toy for Luke. He is leaving the farm in his space camel, just walking into the desert. And the renegade Jedi happens to run into him. I think there was something about him seeing him in town or something. And the renegade Jedi's like, hey, you're Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then Obi-Wan's like, no, I'm Ben. And then, the Jedi kind of presses the matter and is asking Obi-Wan for his help because he's being pursued by Inquisitors. and Obi-Wan refuses to help him. He simply tells him, hey, just go throw your lightsaber in the desert and go into hiding and stop being a Jedi. Even though he's already being pursued by the Inquisitors, even though they somehow didn't catch him earlier in the episode. So he refuses to help Bail and his wife find young Leia at first, and he also refuses to help the renegade Jedi, basically sealing his fate. The next day or so, while in town, I guess after he was off the clock from the crate dragon butchering, Owen confronts Obi-Wan with the T-65 toy, telling him to stay away and out of Luke's life. Meanwhile, the Inquisitors show up again, third sister and fifth brother. Now, fifth brother wants to use the carrot approach, like offering reward for any information leading to the capture of the Renegade Jedi. Third sister's not really obsessed with the Renegade Jedi. She's obsessed with finding Obi-Wan Kenobi 10 years later. But if she's that youngling, that means she's been obsessed with trying to find Obi-Wan Kenobi since she was a youngling, which, to be honest, that doesn't really make sense, but a lot of things in this two-parter really don't, to be honest. So third sister starts threatening everybody. She chops off some woman's hand, and then she happens to talk to Owen of all the people there while Obi-Wan's not too far away in hiding. That's going to be important later, by the way. And she confronts Owen and says, hey, have you seen any Jedi? And Owen's like, I don't like Jedi. They're vermin, and I shoot vermin if they come on my land. And then at first she's like, hey, I like you. And you think that she's going to like move on to somebody else because she probably feels like this guy's a fellow Jedi hater. But then she goes out of her way to threaten Owen and his family. Now, she doesn't know he has a family, but he does. You know, he has Beru and he has young Luke at home. And she's like, if nobody tells me anything about a missing Jedi, then this man and his family are going to die. And of course, before she has an opportunity to strike down Owen Lars, which most of us know that she's not going to, fifth brother's like, enough of this. Look, there's a reward. If you have any information, let us know. Like, I guess the Empire, Stormtroopers, and Inquisitors regarding the Renegade Jedi. Later on, when Obi-Wan is coming back to town, he finds the dead Renegade Jedi hanging from a beam in town. Once again, I don't know if it's Mos Eisley or Ispa or Anchorhead. It's one of those towns. It doesn't really show like a laser wound or like a lightsaber wound on the body. Maybe there is one. Maybe I just missed it, but it's implied that off screen he must have been captured and killed by the Inquisitors, I guess. So when Obi-Wan goes back to the cave, he has like the red light warning from his droid in the sand indicating somebody's inside the cave. Turns out to be Bail Organa, who came all the way from Alderaan to plead with Obi-Wan again to save Leia. And then he basically convinces Obi-Wan that, okay, the right thing to do is to go find and rescue Leia from this criminal world that Bail Organa has tracked her to. Obi-Wan goes to the desert, unburies the lightsabers, his lightsaber, Anakin's lightsaber. But unbeknownst to everyone, the kidnappers of young Leia on Crime Planet or Criminal World, whatever you want to call it, I know it has another name, I don't care. They were actually hired by none other than Third Sister in order to lure Obi-Wan out of hiding into a trap. How convenient. So now that Obi-Wan has his lightsaber, he gets on a transport, he goes to Crime Planet, and, you know, he asks around, he talks to some girl that's dealing some spice. She gives him a free sample he puts in his pocket. He runs into another kid who basically tells him there's a Jedi on the planet that helps people, but the Jedi's not really a Jedi. He's a fake Jedi using magnets, conning people, but he's trying to help people. He cons people, yet he helps people at the same time. Obi-Wan obviously clearly deduces that this guy's a fraud, and he threatens him with a blaster. And then the fake Jedi points him towards the spice lab where Leia is being held. And so Obi-Wan sneaks into the spice lab, causes a distraction, sneaks into the security area, gets into some fisticuff fights, and he goes into one room where he thinks Leia might be, but it's a trap. The three kidnappers show up. They beat him up a couple times, and you think that they're about to get the drop on Obi-Wan, but then he uses the spice that the one girl gave him earlier as a distraction. He throws it on the ground kind of like bat smoke. And then, of course, it gets all three of the lame-ass bounty hunter kidnappers high as a kite, I suppose. Poor Flea, you were a terrible bounty hunter. And then young Leia is practically in the next prison cell room, so why Obi-Wan couldn't simply just feel her presence, I don't know. The point is, Obi-Wan manages to outsmart the kidnappers and rescue young Leia for now. So they slip out of the spice lab, they go into the streets, they get some clothing for young Leia to wear. Meanwhile, the Inquisitors arrive on Crime World. I think there's like 4 Inquisitors. There's another sister Inquisitor. I don't know which one she is. She's not third sister from Jedi Fallen Order. By the way, Jedi Survivor is coming out in 2023. I did a video about that over on the gaming channel. Shameless plug. So we have Grand Inquisitor, we have fifth brother, we have this other sister, and we have third sister show up again. And once again, another confrontation between Grand Inquisitor and third sister. And this happens several times, once again, between parts 1 and 2. But she's not punished by Grand Inquisitor. They just taunt each other. She's not punished. She's not executed on the spot for reasons. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan is trying to get Leia off Criminal Planet. But then while Grand Inquisitor, along with the other sister and the fifth brother, they go off with the stormtroopers to seal off the spaceport and Crime Planet. Third sister sets up a beacon and lets all the bounty hunters know that Obi-Wan is on the planet and that there's a price on his head. So I think Riley was telling me it's like out of a scene of John Wick, because I only saw the first John Wick. I didn't see the other ones yet, but I hear they're good. So maybe one day I'll watch them. So they rip off John Wick, and now everybody's after Obi-Wan Kenobi on this crime planet, and he's trying to sneak off the planet with young Leia, and he gets into a scuffle with one of the bounty hunters, and he's trying to turn off the beacon, the hologram, and Leia asks him why is his face being shown all over the place, and she assumes that's because he's the kidnapper and he's the reason why she was kidnapped. So despite the fact that Obi-Wan risked his life to save her and mentions her father by name, obviously familiar with Bail Organa, with the intention of getting her off this nasty, awful planet back to safety, she runs off. Granted, she is a 10-year-old, so 10-year-olds make dumb decisions. So we have yet another dumb chase scene, eating up time, this time in part 2. We had a dumb chase scene in part 1. Maybe in each of these parts we'll have another dumb chase scene between Leia and somebody that's just absolutely ridiculous. So Leia's, trying to run around all these people. A lot of them are bounty hunters, and they're fighting Obi-Wan. Not all of them, but some of them. And he's basically trying to protect Leia while at the same time get her back. And he's trying to reason with her. But this little girl can't be reasoned with because she's convinced that he's just as bad as everybody else around her. And eventually they end up on rooftops. So she decides to run away from him onto rooftops. And so he pursues her. And 2 other bounty hunters end up on the rooftop as well. And meanwhile, several blocks away, also on a rooftop, you have third sister. I don't know what she's doing up there. She's just chilling, looking over the city. But she happens to hear, I think, some blaster fire. And I guess she deduces that something of interest is going on over there. Perhaps it's Obi-Wan, perhaps it's young Leia. And she starts heading that way, using like these epic force jumps and flips. And it's just ridiculous. Leia actually nearly falls to her death, but she is saved by Obi-Wan, who finally uses his force powers to catch her and lower her down to the ground to safety. Meanwhile, fake Jedi shows up to kill one of the other bounty hunters. I think Obi-Wan killed the Jurassic World bounty hunter, and then Robot bounty hunter was killed by fake Jedi. They both were using blasters. I know, how uncivilized. So fake Jedi, which was also initially out to con Obi-Wan and capture Obi-Wan because of the price on his head, is now helping him, saying, look, here, you need to take this. Go to this warehouse, get to this transport ship, get off Crime Planet, and you'll find some people that will help you. And then Obi-Wan's like, well, why should I trust you? And he's like, well, you don't really have much of a choice. And then young Leia is like, yeah, we have to trust him. But you didn't exactly trust Obi-Wan like 5 seconds ago. Why are you trusting the fake Jedi when you didn't even trust Obi-Wan, who just rescued you from a spice lab and 3 guys that kidnapped you off your home planet? It does not make sense. Fake Jedi is going to be a distraction. He's going to buy them some time so they can get to the warehouse, the transport ship. And third sister's like hot on pursuit. And she confronts the fake Jedi. She easily determines that he's not actually a Jedi because she doesn't sense the Force in him. And she throws him up against the wall. And she uses a new power that she didn't have in part 1, by the way, in order to find out exactly where Obi-Wan and young Leia are going. So third sister has been written extremely poorly. and made way too OP. Like, she can read minds now. However, she could clearly not read minds in part 1, because she could have just read Owen's mind. She could have also sensed Obi-Wan nearby if she had those two abilities to begin with, but obviously she didn't in part 1, but now she does in part 2. Obi-Wan senses that there's an Inquisitor after them, and he tells Leia to run off to the transport ship and wait for him. Meanwhile, this cat and mouse game begins in the warehouse right by the transport ship between Obi-Wan and Third Sister. Third Sister has her lightsaber out, walking around, taunting Obi-Wan, knowing that he's there, even though Obi-Wan's just hiding. He hasn't said anything yet. He's debating whether or not he wants to use his lightsaber while he's hiding in the shadows. Similar to Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi, by the way. She also takes something else from Return of the Jedi when Vader tells Luke, "Your thoughts betray you." She uses that same line on Obi-Wan. Well done, writers of Obi-Wan the miniseries. Then Third Sister reveals her intentions. Not to kill Obi-Wan, but to capture him alive and take Obi-Wan to Darth Vader. This revelation really didn't make much sense to me because it came across, if you look at Obi-Wan, the way he's kind of having a freaked out look on his face, as if he doesn't know that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. But by the end of episode 3, he was fully aware of the fact that Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker were the same person. And the revelation that Third Sister also knows that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader kind of goes against previous stories in Legends, and I think even in current Star Wars lore. Very few within the Empire actually knew that Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader were the same person. I think most people assumed that Anakin Skywalker was just another Jedi that was killed off near the end of the Clone Wars. But anyone that found out that Anakin's true identity was Darth Vader would end up usually at the end of Vader's lightsaber or a Force choke. The Grand Inquisitor shows up in the warehouse, allowing Obi-Wan to conveniently escape just as the Third Sister's about to corner Obi-Wan, or there's about to be a confrontation between her and Obi-Wan in an epic lightsaber duel that clearly doesn't end up happening. And once again, of course, the Grand Inquisitor is getting into an argument with Third Sister about her insubordination, how she's going to let him get away, and that's why he has to take over. And despite all the times she's been disobedient and butted heads between parts 1 and parts 2, Third Sister somehow manages to quote-unquote kill the Grand Inquisitor without him seeing any sort of betrayal from her coming. Now, this is a potential retcon issue, and it may not turn out to be a retcon because in Star Wars Rebels, which I think takes place after the events of Obi-Wan Kenobi or sometime later, between Obi-Wan Kenobi and A New Hope, the Grand Inquisitor is introduced in Star Wars Rebels and ends up being killed off in Star Wars Rebels, not Obi-Wan Kenobi. So my theory is he's not actually dead, and I think he was stabbed in the lower part of his body. And as some of you know, a lot of characters that we thought were killed off turn out alive just fine. Case in point, look what Obi-Wan did to Darth Maul at the end of episode 1. He chopped Darth Maul in half and sent him down some sort of long-ass tube, only for Darth Maul to return in Clone Wars. So just because the Grand Inquisitor got stabbed by Third Sister doesn't mean the dude's dead. And so I seriously doubt Grand Inquisitor's dead. But in all seriousness, Third Sister should not have been able to so easily overpower and catch the Grand Inquisitor off guard like she did. For one thing, the Grand Inquisitor clearly was more powerful than her in part 1 because she was about to strike down the renegade Jedi at that bar in Tatooine. But the Grand Inquisitor, I think he used the Force to stop her lightsaber. If I recall correctly, the Grand Inquisitor was originally the head of the Temple Guard of the Jedi Order, which are hand-selected elite few that were tasked with the duties of protecting the Jedi Temple, and he happened to be in charge of the Jedi Temple Guard, and he's one of the reasons, I think, why it was so easy for Darth Vader and the 501st to get inside the Jedi Temple, because he had already pledged his loyalty to the Emperor. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I think the Grand Inquisitor is supposed to be the most powerful of the Inquisitors, way more powerful than any of them. That's why he's the Grand Inquisitor, which would include him being more powerful than the third sister. But this little distraction allows Obi-Wan to get to the transport ship with young Leia, and they get off of Crime Planet with third sister running out of the warehouse with her lightsaber drawn, yelling into the sky, "We will find you, we will get you," blah, blah, blah. But the final scene was actually kind of cool because I guess it goes to Mustafar, where Vader's castle is inside the Bacta tank. You see Hayden Christensen all like Darth Vader looking without the mask. He's just inside the Bacta tank. His face is all fugly looking, from his little fight with Obi-Wan 10 years prior on the same planet. So that final scene in part 2 shows some promise for this miniseries going forward into parts 3, 4, 5, and 6. In my opinion, Obi-Wan Kenobi so far is a mixed bag. There's things I obviously like about it. The return of Ewan McGregor. There's some other interesting aspects that hopefully we see play out throughout the next parts, including more involvement with Darth Vader. How that's going to pan out remains to be seen. Hopefully we get plenty of Vader time with Hayden Christensen. I don't know if they're going to have James Earl Jones voicing Vader when the mask is on, or maybe they'll get somebody that happens to sound like James Earl Jones, probably at this point because James Earl Jones is in his upper 90s. But still, there's always a hope that Obi-Wan Kenobi, while off to a rocky start, might end up being pretty awesome by the time we get to the end of part 6. At least that's what I hope happens. One of the issues that I have is these characters, because as a Star Wars fan, you know what's going to happen to most of these characters. So they put these characters in danger, and there's no suspense when it comes to what's going to happen to Obi-Wan, young Luke or Leia, Owen, Beru, Bell, and his wife, the Grand Inquisitor, unless it's being retconned, which I doubt because Deborah Chow apparently said that she is going to respect the continuity of Star Wars. And I'm guessing that includes not just the movies, but also all the TV shows, because she was directing a few episodes of Mandalorian, and she's obviously fully aware of Rebels and Clone Wars. And all of that is supposed to be part of the current lore and timeline of what makes up Star Wars canon at the moment. All the expanded universe stuff has been shelved over into Legends. And there's no real suspense about what happens to Darth Vader either, because once again, we know what happens to most of these characters, including, I think, Fifth Brother in Rebels. I think his fate's sealed in Rebels, if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, I haven't seen all the episodes of Rebels. For the record, I have nothing against any of the actors or actresses involved in this show. I just want to make that abundantly clear right now. But when it comes to the character third sister, she is coming across as extremely unlikable, even as a villain. Because, yeah, Vader was a villain. Tarkin was a villain. And Emperor Palpatine, villain. But there was still something about them that the viewers and the fans liked. Well, maybe not all fans, but there definitely are Darth Vader, Tarkin, and Maul fans out there. But the same cannot be said about Third Sister. I looked on Twitter, and most people do not like Third Sister. I'm sure she has a few fans out there, but the majority of Star Wars fans watching this don't seem to like Third Sister very much. To me, she's coming across as an evil Mary Sue, kind of the opposite of Rey, I suppose, where Rey was a Mary Sue, and Third Sister's an evil Mary Sue. She's too OP, and honestly, she would have been executed by the Grand Inquisitor at least a few times between parts 1 and 2 for all the times she was disobedient, showing no respect to the chain of command, and should be no match to the Grand Inquisitor when it comes to his force powers or lightsaber combat skills. But hopefully her character and the show itself will improve going forward. Third Sister better not end up having some sort of redemption arc. In my opinion, Third Sister needs to die as a villain, ultimately killed by Obi-Wan, the Grand Inquisitor, or perhaps even Darth Vader himself. Especially since she comes across more evil at times than Fifth Brother and even Grand Inquisitor. She chopped some chick's hand off for no freaking reason on Tatooine. And she outright wanted to kill that renegade Jedi against the orders of the Grand Inquisitor. Plus, she was more than willing to slice down Owen and then go to his farm and kill his family. Third Sister also hired some lame-ass kidnappers, bounty hunters, to kidnap a 10-year-old girl just so she could lure out a Jedi. In other words, the only way forward for her character right now is for Third Sister to continue fully embracing the dark side until the end. There is no redemption arc that would make sense for Third Sister, even if she turned out to be one of those younglings. And timeline-wise, it doesn't make sense because the younglings were very young. What would she be? Maybe in her late teens at the most? If that was how old Third Sister is, and she doesn't come across like she's in her late teens, more like she's maybe in her 20s. Some final thoughts really quick. There was a really cool scene on Criminal Planet I forgot to go over. Obi-Wan comes across a veteran clone trooper. I think he was from the 501st. It looked like a 501st uniform he was wearing. He was just sitting there. He had a beard, long hair, begging for credits, and Obi-Wan actually gave this 501st trooper some credits, and that was pretty much the only interaction between him and the clone trooper, played by the same actor who plays Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett, as well as Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, and all the clones in Attack of the Clones, as well as Revenge of the Sith. Whether or not that clone turns out to be somebody important or just a random clone that was mustered out of service at the end of the Clone Wars once the Empire took over, who knows? I doubt it's Rex, but it could be another clone that turns out to be important for the story going forward. But that would be an interesting conflict and dynamic between a clone trooper as well as Obi-Wan, because it was the clones that turned and killed most of the Jedi when Order 66 was carried out by the Emperor. And I also like the fact that, similar to war vets that still wear their army jackets, you have the clone trooper still wearing his uniform, so that does make sense to some degree. And the fact that it seems like a lot of people would look down upon the clone troopers after the end of the Clone Wars. Once again, very similar to what happens to war vets, especially at the end of the Vietnam War, and I think the Iraq War as well. There's a major concern I have about retconning, and I think that we may see more of that, not less, before the end of this mini-series. Prime example, there was a tweet that I wanted to screenshot and share with y'all really quick regarding the scene from A New Hope where you have Obi-Wan, Luke chilling in Obi-Wan's hut. By the way, Obi-Wan doesn't have the hut yet. I guess he builds it after the events of the mini-series. And, you know, he touches R2-D2, which has a message from Leia to Obi-Wan. And she mentions nothing about ever meeting Obi-Wan Kenobi and him rescuing her from Crime Planet. So that's a retcon, a small one, but still a retcon nonetheless. And I'm also concerned about this rematch of the century coming up between Obi-Wan and Vader, because once again, the last time that Obi-Wan and Vader saw each other was on Mustafar at the end of episode 3. Retconning can work if you do it right, but it can also break the current canon of Star Wars, and that is my concern. We'll just have to see how it plays out by the end of this miniseries. Oh, and the fact that while on Alderaan, when Bail was having a little chat with young Leia, he talked about how she was going to lead the planet one day. That was a bit of a foreshadowing and some dark humor, but it did give me a bit of a laugh, especially since most of us know what happens to Alderaan in A New Hope. But if parts 1 and 2 are the best that the Obi-Wan miniseries has to offer, well, I have a real bad feeling about this miniseries going forward. But that's pretty much how I feel about parts 1 and 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the miniseries. Hopefully, parts 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be much better. Your thoughts, your views, your opinions regarding Obi-Wan Kenobi, the miniseries, and do you want me to continue reviewing each part as they come out? Feel free and let me know below in the comments section.